Hey guys, if you're thinking about becoming a guest on a podcast, there's really a couple of ways that you could actually reach out to somebody in order to make that happen. So number one, you could of course always go to iTunes, go to SoundCloud, go to Stitcher, go to the Google Play Store, wherever you might find the relevant podcast, and you could listen through to a couple of the podcasts, and then really based upon whether you think it's a fit, and the right actual podcast in terms of subject and style for you, then that's the point at which you could make a reach out to, whether it's the site admin if you go over to the website. But typically speaking, podcast hosts will have their contact details quite readily available for you online. So you could definitely just reach out to somebody and say, hey, I listened to your show, I particularly like this episode, could we talk about it? That is definitely one of the ways that you could reach out and become a guest on a podcast. The other ways are via cold response, of course. So cold response means that it's a little bit kind of like spray and pray, if you will. So following a kind of cold email process, which is something that we do at Pearl Lemon Leads, we can build targeted campaigns to target podcast hosts to ensure that we can get you onto the relevant podcast. Now, the reason I said spray and pray is because if it's something that you're doing manually yourself, what typically happens is that people start with a gusto, but because it's not a focused and core activity, you might get some of the mail merges wrong, you might get some of the names wrong, you might not get the right podcast in mind, and you get all of these degrees of error that can come into your actual presentation of the email that really impacts the actual ROI that you get from it. Because you might get on some podcasts, but you might not get to the amount of podcasts you can then go on to be. And the final thing is that, of course, you could do what I call a kind of social reach out. So a social reach out is when you go onto your own social media platforms and you put the word out asking people that you'd love to be a guest on a show, and if anyone's looking, then you love to contribute and add value. You could reach out to Facebook groups, you could reach out to LinkedIn groups, you could reach out to groups just across the kind of World Wide Web, if you will, to make it be known that you're interested in becoming a guest on a podcast. Or of course, you could just talk to us and we could run that whole process end to end for you. All right.